I'm going to start off and show you how I paint the background. I am going to use a number 2 low Cornell flat brush. It comes in this package of 3 of them. There's 3-inch, 2-inch, and a 1-inch. And I like the 2-inch. I use this for painting furniture, the base paintings, signs I make, and a lot of other things. You could use a 3/4 inch that comes in the plaid unstroked Donna Dewberry package that I link to on my blog. But I just like this because it goes faster, and I find the putting on the background a little boring. Now this canvas has some folk art gesso on it. They come pre-gessoed. Let me see if that's in focus. They come pre-gessoed, but they're still rather thirsty, meaning they'll really drink up the paint. And if you're going to be doing any kind of stroke work, which I do partially on this painting, it causes it to skip, the paint to skip rather than just flow smoothly. And then I also tried something new, and we'll see how it works today. I put a thin coat of the satin varathane on it just to seal it even more. Not sure how it's worked. This is a trial. We'll see. We'll see if it helps it to the paint flow more smoothly. So I'm going to get my paint on my palette and get started. So here's my palette. I have the Folk Art Wicker White, and this is Butter Pecan. And I like the Butter Pecan because it's a really nice neutral color. And for the background, I want it to be mostly white, and I just want the Butter Pecan to be kind of mixed in here and there as to give it texture. But it's not going to be very, I wouldn't say very visible, but a prominent color. And then I'm just going to come in and blend it on here with my brush. And you see how fast it goes with the larger brush. I'm going to pick up more white, a little bit more Butter Pecan, and I've got some brushes in the way. We're going to move those over there. Oops, do I have my palette in the way? I do that a lot. One moment. Okay, I wasn't too bad about getting the palette in there. It's the bad side of standing on the right side of my tripod, because then I tend to get my palette, which now this thing wants to move. I'm going to have to hold it. I'm out of white, so I'm going to throw some more white onto my palette. Seems there's a lot of white, so don't be afraid to put a big puddle on your palette and just start mixing it in. I'm crisscrossing, really moving my brush. Add a little more Butter Pecan. Now you can go over, I want darker on the outside and then lighter in the center. So I will do the Butter Pecan along the outside, and then I'll add more white as I come in. Now you can play with this and see what you like. But there, see, I'm adding the more white and feathering it out into the dark. I'm gonna have to hold this. Typically, I'm not standing this far away from the canvas or surface I'm painting. And I still want more white in the center. I want it whited out, And I'm gonna make sure the edges. Okay, you notice I have some of the dark edges around the corners. Like I said, just play with it. I'm not too precise. And I just want a mottled background. Now to make that have spread easier, I could have put an extender on there, just kind of painted a light coat, and that would help the paint to move more smoothly. Oops, got a little, didn't mean to get Butter Pecan in there. I was trying to just get white. But there, I have my mottled background, and I'm happy with that. So I will let it dry, and I'll come back and start my design. For the jar, I have drawn on here the outline of the jar, and to color it in, I'm going to use Folk Art Floating Medium, filling my brush with it, and I'm just touching into the blue and making a very thin wash. And then I'm going to go over the neck and rim of the jar. I have the outline a bit darker than I would hopefully normally, hoping that you can see it just so you can get the idea. And maybe the wash will kind of lighten it so it doesn't show through the rest of the painting, because this is mimicking glass, blue glass, so you don't want it to be opaque. You want it to look translucent and have some of the background maybe looking like it's coming through the glass. We want it to be kind of consistently blue, but it doesn't matter if it has a little bit of streaks in it. Now this has a little bump out on that side, a rounded edge there. We'll come along, and I'm kind of going with the direction of the lines of the outline. And then I'm going to switch to a larger brush for the base of it. I'm doing the same, filling my brush with the floating medium, touching in the blue, getting a very thin wash, and then I'm going to do the same. I'm going to follow, hopefully I don't get my head in here, the outline of the jar. My brush hit my mic, so it kind of joggled it there. And then I'm just going to pull the color down from that neck area. I'm not going to worry about it being a little bit darker there. I'm just going to act like that's a shadow. And I'm going to do the same over here. Trying to make it as even as I can. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit darker in some areas than others. But having the floating medium be very thick. And you see how if I stop in one area it makes a mark? So I drag from the top all the way down. There. And if I find any spots I think need a little more, I'll just add it. And there is my jar. Oh, did it come out of the, okay, yeah, it's fine. Now we're going to paint in our leaves for the tulips. Now I have on my palette, this is Hauser Green Light, and this is Thicket. This is Folk Art brand. One is a multi-surface and the other is just the regular Folk Art. And the difference is, one thing is the Thicket, which is the multi-surface, will have more of a satin sheen, and the other is matte. But since I'm going to finish my painting with a varathane or a protective coating of some kind, it doesn't matter. So, and the multi-surface, you can also paint on several different type surfaces like glass, wood, plastic, quite a few metal, and the other one you can't use on glass. I'm not sure what all you can, but both of them work very good for paintings. And I'm double loading. I'll let you see this. This is a 3/4 inch flat plaid one stroke Donna Dewberry. I do link to it on my website. Sorry, didn't mean to kick that. Let me make sure we're in focus. And I'm going to do, let me see, a leaf here. I'm going to start and flatten. You see I'm flattening the brush, and then I'm going to let it lift while I'm twist up to a point. Now the point did not finish. I ran out of paint. So I can go over it. And you see how it's kind of showing some of the canvas through? That's okay. We can go over it a couple times if we want, and even go backwards. And you get the hang of it after a bit. And you can come back in later if you want with more dark. I'll put some dark on my corner and just add that. And it can go up off the canvas. That's not terribly important. Make the leaf as tall as you want it. And I may have wanted it to go further over here, but that's okay. I'm going as on the fly here. So let's see. Let's have another one going up this direction. And maybe one going up, out, and over and down. Now the tulips may cover some or part of these leaves, and you can always put a leaf or two in afterwards to set some of the tulips behind. And that's okay too. So it's your design, just get the basic elements down and then decide what you want to do with the rest. So I will let that dry, and then I'll come back in and I'm going to fill in a little bit more. I think, I might do one more leaf to kind of fill in, or I could do that, or I could put a little strand over here. So go with what you feel like. I could maybe put a little bit of greenery over here. So put like a little thing there. And we'll see what we do with that. I am going to change one thing up. And after looking at this, I thought that these look more like iris leaves than actual tulip leaves. Tulip leaves have a tendency to curl inwards. So to get that effect, I'm going to go over my original with just thicket. So the darker color doesn't have to be exact, but I do want it all the darker color. And you can do this in stages. What I mean by you don't have to just do it in one big long stroke if you don't feel comfortable doing that. I just prefer painting that way. And again, on the last one. Now that one was a little bit wider there, you can see, and that's okay, I'll just fill it in. And there I will let these dark leaves dry. And then I will come back in with the lighter color and make them seem to have curled. So there we have the dark leaves. Now we're going to do the light green, or the light Hauser green. It's called Hauser green light, excuse me, on the edges of the dark leaves. Now I went over it with the thicket, and now I'm going to I loaded, I should tell you, there is some floating medium there, and I dipped my brush in the floating medium and then a corner in the Hauser green light, and I worked it in. I want it to kind of graduate from totally covered to just thin, so it would be like it's graduating on there, graduated color. And you see how I did the light edge. I'll go back and reload, and then I'm going to go along this edge. I'm keeping my eye on the outer edge, trying to keep it right along that edge. And if I have to reload, I go back and I reload, and I kind of start down here. Same again, I'm running out of paint. Reload. Up, and then I just kind of blend it in along there. I turn my brush on the chisel edge to kind of get that right along the edge. And it's not perfect, but that's okay. The leaves are kind of the backdrop to the whole painting, so it's not like they have to be perfect. And if you want that contrast to be a little starker, you just go in there and add a little more. And as you can, if it doesn't look the way you think it should right away, just walk away and let it dry. And then, sometimes when you come back, you can really see what you've done and how the effect you want it to create. Sometimes that walking away and coming back is the ticket. So I'm doing the same on this one. I'm creating that lighter edge. Seems I have more paint and less floating medium on this one. That's okay, I can work it in. And if there's any time that you think you have too much light, if you want to bring in more dark after it dries, that's fine too. This is not rocket science, and there's no such thing as perfection in painting. Now, sometimes less is more, but sometimes I'll see something that I think needs a little help, and then I'll go in and do that. And let's see, do I have any thicket? I do have a little bit of thicket left on my thing, and I'll just kind of blend that down the center if I think it's too stark. And there you have the lighter edges, the dark center. Let it dry and come back and see if you want to touch any up. And I'm just going to leave it the way it is and focus on my tulips next. So I did as I suggested, and I walked away and came back and realized there was still something wrong with my leaves. And I figured it out. It's that the leaves are not exactly straight in real life. They have some curves and some little areas that go in. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking my Hauser Light Green straight. There's no blending medium in it or floating medium. And I'm just going to come down to the chisel edge, kind of go out, in, then along, and kind of let it go out in a curve or a bump and come back in along those edges. Not too many, and it could be a long bump out or a curve. And it gives it more of a natural look. If you want it to be, less bumpy, not as many, you just come along and you bring it out on a long stroke there, and you just like that, and it gives it that illusion of some of the ripples in the leaves. I'll do that again over here. And I'll just come in and fill this in. With the lighter green. And then we want to leave that other side to be kind of straight. And then I'll just do maybe one on this one. And you get the idea here. Just kind of eyeball it. Now you want this to kind of go up to a point because that's where the leaf folds over. So we want that to be noticeably flat there. And I should look at a fold in a leaf to make sure how I got that, if it's correct. And that is how you make it look even more natural. Now let's see, we'll do this one. I hope this is making sense for you. Now look at pictures of things if it helps, or even pictures of other paintings of leaves, all sorts of styles, and you'll get an idea. And I'm by no means perfect at this. I just basically wing it. And there you have your leaves again. Now I'm going to walk away before I put the tulips on. The original painting that I showed a picture of a couple of days ago did not have a tulip over here. This one I'm going to put a tulip here because I thought I'd add some greenery because I thought the leaf was too far over and I didn't like it. So I am now going to modify it and put a tulip here and a few more over there. And I'm going to go for an odd amount, like 5 tulips. And so we will put those on next. I'll underpaint them. Okay, you may have noticed or may be able to see that I've drawn my tulips on here I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with a pencil. I sketched it as lightly as I could, and now I'm going to undercoat them. I had added this little piece of greenery thinking I would like it there instead of a tulip, and I didn't, so I'm just going to go over top of that and go ahead and put a tulip there. I had done one other painting like this, and I had sketched in my stems, and then I ended up not liking where I had put them, and I had to wipe them out. So this time I'm not going to do the stems first. I'm going to do the flowers, and then I can add the stems to make sure I get them in the proper place. So I am going to undercoat with a burnt umber because my tulips are red. I'm just a touch of white in there. And red in the craft paints is not very opaque. So to get the depth of color I want, I'm going to undercoat with the burnt umber. I guess any dark brown could work, but this is like my go-to color. So I've worked that into my brush. The burnt umber is a little on the thick side, so I'm touching into a little bit of water. Usually I also have floating medium here, which works even better. I was too lazy to grab it. But so here's one of the tulips. It's going off the canvas. It's not completely on it, which I like for added interest. I'm going to lift up the side and paint the side as well. So if anybody wanted to hang this but not frame it, it would still look pretty on all sides. And I try to make my strokes kind of go the direction the petals are going to go, and that just makes everything work a bit better later on. I'm going to find my floating medium, put that on my palette so I can dip into it to help this burnt umber flow better. Now this is another tulip. It's a basic U shape. Some are wider at top than others, or at the bottom. Looks like I'll have to get some more burnt umber on my palette as well. And I just get it in there. So I'm not too particular because this is just the undercoat. And I'll do it on all of the tulips. No need in you watching me do this, it's pretty boring. Now we're going to add the red to our tulips. I have two colors of red on my palette, apple red and cardinal red. And I've double loaded my brush. There's the cardinal, this is the apple. And I've double loaded it. I also have burnt umber for a little shadowing. And I'm just going to go in with the cardinal red, the darker red, to the outside of my tulips. Now I will be going over this with a couple coats because, like I said, red is not opaque in the craft acrylics. Super opaque. It's just takes a little work to get it to be as opaque or to get the brightness of color that you want. So now I'm just going to stroke following what the petals will be. And if I want to shadow it a little bit along the outside edge, I dip a corner in the burnt umber and work it in to my paint. Start at the bottom and stroke up, and it gives it a bit of shadow on the side. Very faint. You can always add more later if you don't like how much is on there, but I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to come and do this one. Remember, this one isn't completely on. It's not a complete or full tulip on the front here, just a partial one. And I will do this with all of these tulips. Go in and overcoat the brown with the red. You see how all of them are undercoated with red. Now I'm going to let it dry because I'll show you what happens if you try to go over the acrylic wet. You will start to lift. Well, that one's dry enough, but you will lift some of it and it'll show the underneath. Those are dry enough, but okay, there, you see how it lifts. And it doesn't take very long for acrylics to dry. That's why you usually have to work fast if you want them to blend. But I'm going to let these dry completely, and then I will come back over it with a second coat. Well, it seems I got ahead of myself there. I should have done the overcoat of the jar, meaning I take a coat of the blue, or some of the blue, which I have the floating medium in my brush. a little bit of the blue paint, and I want to go over top of the leaves so it makes them look like they're sitting behind or inside of the jar. And you just drag the paint down over the leaves. Keep reloading so it gives it the depth of color you want. I'm kind of at an odd angle here. So let's see. Now I'll probably switch to a little bit smaller brush so I don't mess up the neck of the jar, which I'll have to paint too. So I'll switch over to a number 12. That's a 3/4 inch brush. Let me see my 12. I have a 10 here. No, I'll go ahead and use the 10 since it's readily right here. My other one's here too somewhere, but okay. Now I'm going to do over the neck of the jar. And I try to follow the curvature there. And right on this little part here too. And then we'll come back in and we'll put some highlights in there. Let's see if I got it too high. I don't think make it straight. I think I'm doing it at an angle because I'm looking at it at an angle. Okay, so there we have the jar over top of the stems. Okay, now we'll add the highlights. It's not completely dry, but that'll make the highlights kind of work better. So I'm just tapping, which would be along the rim of the brush, and then these are where the little things are at for the lid. And I got that crooked because I'm not holding my brush well. And right there. Then we can put a few highlights here and there. Want to make them blend a little bit, you can. And if you get it too much, you can add a little blue to blend them out. And maybe a highlight here. Let me look at my other one, see what I did. And then I kind of make a water line. Kind of like here's the water in, and it goes up behind where you can see it looks behind, and I'm not real pleased with that part, so I'll kind of diffuse that with some more blue. And let's see how I did it. A little bit lighter, fainter. So yeah, my other jar it curved over there, so it gave the illusion of curving, and now that tulip is on there. So we will make do. Now there's a full rim down there. Try to be straight where I am not being straight, for crying out loud. Okay, I got the highlights fixed, and now I'm just going to put some sparkle light here and there. That's just kind of more opaque white, and then I'll leave it alone. If I don't like this, once it's dry, I can come back over it and touch up the highlights a little more. It looks like it was rather on the wet side, so it's kind of diffusing out, and I'll just fix that later. Okay, the red is dry. We'll go in and we'll do the second coat with some shadows. Now let's paint in our tulips. I have our two colors of red, the apple red right here and the cardinal red right there. Touch of burnt umber for the shadowing and a little bit of floating medium in case that burnt umber drags. I dampened my brush and dried it out. It's just damp. I double load my two colors and blend it into the brush. I want it full of paint. I want it to go up the bristles 2/3 of the way. And I'll dip the darker red color in a bit of the burnt umber, blend it in, start at the center, go along the outside of the tulip. Reload. Now I got to figure out how I want my tulip to go. So I want, this one goes off, so I'm just going to go like this. Smooth out that lighter red right in there. And I reload my brush and I blend it in. And then I'll do the same here. I'll have it come up that way. So it's like the front petals that go over the back petals. And it's not fully visible because this tulip goes off the canvas. So we'll come back and I'll work on some more of that later after that's dried a bit to get the, see if it does the effect I want. Now I can do this one. Let's see. I always have the dark side to the outside as I make these tulips. Now there's different types of tulips. Let me see, how do I think I want this one to come up here like that. And you're getting, I don't know if you can see the shadowing, the graduation of color in there. I might need to add some highlights. On here you can see where the shadow makes the petal shape and how it's slightly darker here because that is inside of the flower. This is the front petals. I highlighted this little corner here because that's where the inside shows through of these petals go in that direction. Now I made little shape that these were straight across like the other ones, and I wanted it to have more of a, I don't know, well, just a different shape than straight across. So that's the back petals, and here's the front petals coming into it, and this is kind of facing at an angle. It seems like I need to, looks like, because that's where the stem will be, that I need to make that be the center. So I have, I know this is probably confusing, my brush double loaded with the lighter red, darker red, and a touch of the burnt umber. And it's hot in here, so it's drying fast. Dip just a little bit in the floating medium to give it some more. And see, that would be the center. So I would have the front petal. See that? Right there's a petal. Now the other ones I did a little bit differently. And then here's a petal coming up, and see that goes to the back. I may either darken it or lighten it to contrast more depending on my mood. Now so I'm highlighting the center of that petal because I want it to be a little more red, and then I think I will highlight that a little bit because that contrasts with the dark shadowing there that creates the outside of that petal. And you can work it a little bit till you like the effect you have. Try not to overwork it. That is a problem that I have. And so there is those two tulips. And this one, let's see, I can decide whether I want that one to have like one big petal coming up here as opposed to that having two petals going from the center. Or I can make it be maybe more to one side. But I do the same, dark on the outside, lighter on the inside, and I can go like this to make that center petal. That. And then like this. And I kind of blend it in there. So now you see these two petals there and then one up the center. And I want a little more light red. And I'll leave that be for a little bit. Blend it a little bit more in there. And then you have that one. It kind of straggly on that end. And so now we'll start this one. Now you see the top is kind of flat. I may want that to have a little shape. And so I can do like this. That could be what's going to be the back, inside, petals. And I can, let's see, I want it to have a little divot here. So go up and over, and I'll have it come to there. Now it's not showing a distinction because I made the back dark. I should have made that light, so, or make the inside of the petals be lighter. So let me see how I like this one. I'm kind of doing this at an odd angle because of the camera. So I want it to have a point right there, and I'm not managing to get it, and I'm making my paint muddy. I could highlight it with some orange. Yeah, so I can come back in and let me get some more of the lighter red on my palette. And do the same here. Make it go up into a point and come back down. And that works too. So this one has the lighter on the outer edges rather than the dark, and the background has the darker. So, and so that's the fourth tulip. Let's see, everything in the camera. Yes, so we'll do this tulip. Maybe I'll make that one. I'll make that will be the oddball tulip. I'll make this one. Let me think. Okay, this one can have like 3 bumps. Maybe make it. And since that's only one coat, that's going to be lighter until I can come in and do a couple more. You can see how transparent red is. You see how it's against the white. It really has a hard time being opaque, so I might need to let that dry so I can come back in. I'm looking at a picture of some different shaped tulips if you wonder why I'm hesitating and humming. Okay, let's see. I see how this one goes kind of up, and I may be totally screwing this up, but back down, and then the line comes in. And that didn't work, so I will let it dry and do another coat on this lighter red so that I can get it to contrast well with my next coat. Let's see if I just put some bright red all over this, if I can get the contrast I'm looking for. I had a little bit of the dark red in there. So there, it's nice and streaky. I like that. Okay, now let's see if we can go over it with the light red and burnt umber. Well, the dark red mixed with the burnt umber and the light red. Now let's see. I don't think I did any with this type of. That works. I need a little bit more contrast. Try to make each tulip just a little bit different. Okay, I'll let it dry and I'll see if it has enough contrast. Sometimes when it dries, it's darker. So we'll see how that works. I'm sorry, you guys. I thought I had the camera on and I didn't, and I demoed the stems and then realized I didn't even have the camera on until I was done. Okay, I have the Hauser green light in the thicket, and I double load a number 10 flat brush. And then what I did was I came in, found the center of the tulip where I want the stem to come from, and I kind of make a Y shape on the top, and then I just drag my brush down into the jar. And I do that for each and every stem. Drag it down into the jar. I realize I will have to go back over this with the blue again. When I showed you how to put the blue over top, I forgot that I had to put the stems in, and this video has been a trial for me because I keep making stupid mistakes. So here we go. And I do that for each and every stem, figure out where they want to go. I want them, and I paint them on, but they're pretty straightforward and simple. I decided I like that tulip just the way it is. I'm not going to add or take away anything. This is the second painting I did. The first one, here you will notice the tulips are a little bit different. They got more jagged edges. But I didn't like, or when I did the painting part of the tulips, I actually was off camera half time, so you couldn't see what I was doing. But you could also make them with jagged edges. And this one also has not the curved leaves, it's just the flat leaves, which works if that's what you like and you're perfectly good with just that. So that is the painting of tulips in a mason jar. You could also do other flowers. I think this would be really cute with sunflowers. I may try it. I will practice first so that I can actually make you a decent video.